Hi everyone, and welcome to my latest video, which is all about the latest absolutely mad, absolutely insane Formula 1 Grand Prix in Baku on Sunday. Now, if you haven't watched the race, I would avoid this video. If you have watched the race, then I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. My thoughts are, well, much like the Azerbaijan Grand Prix last season, this was most definitely an event-filled race from start to finish. And I dare say there was a lot of luck to be had, good and bad, throughout the course of this Grand Prix. Now, in qualifying, what we should have had was a Ferrari 1-2, but Kimi Raikkonen sort of messed up his final qualifying lap and wound up down in 6th place, whereas Vettel ended up on pole. And to begin with, this seemed like it was going to be Vettel's race to lose. He had the best start, he was comfortably leading, and behind him there were a few bits of chaos going on. Raikkonen ended up going into the side of the Force India of Esteban Ocon, which was arguably, upon watching the replay, I would say was arguably Ocon's fault, as he could have left more room, but rather sharply chopped Raikkonen off. And then behind Raikkonen and Ocon, there was some stuff going on involving the Williams of Sirotkin and Fernando Alonso's McLaren, and one or two others as well, which led to a few unplanned early pit stops for new front wings, new tyres, all sorts really. But at the front of the track, at the front of the race, Vettel was controlling it quite comfortably, and he was making those super soft tyres do really, really well, and it looked like he was going to end up, once Bottas pitted, which he would have had to sooner or later, even after Vettel had pitted for soft tyres, he wasn't very far behind Bottas, so you would have imagined that Vettel would have taken the lead, gone on to win. And then came the safety car as a result of that incident between the Red Bulls of Ricciardo and Verstappen. If you're a Verstappen fan, well, I think even the most diehard Verstappen fan has to admit that so far this season he's driven some very untidy races, and whilst, to begin with, his battle with Ricciardo was hard but fair, he was aggressive in his defence, and Ricciardo is aggressive on the offence, and it was all very tense, but it was all very fair. Well, the incident in question, Ricciardo went smack into the back of Verstappen leading up to turn 1. My personal view, having watched the replay a few times, is that it was largely Verstappen's fault. He went a bit punchy on a couple of occasions beforehand. He was slower than Ricciardo. He perhaps, it's Red Bull's team policy not to impose team orders, but to avoid moments like this where cars come together, you sometimes have to be prepared to issue orders. Red Bull didn't do that, and things were getting quite spicy between the two Red Bull drivers, and in the end, the team and both drivers have paid the price for it. No points scored, whereas they looked on course for a reasonable finish, and there were consequences to that. Verstappen, to me, it appeared that he moved under braking, or moved twice under braking, which is against the rules. Maybe Ricciardo, misjudged things as well a bit there, but I think Verstappen was being, not for the first time, perhaps too aggressive in his defensive driving. He's been criticised for that before, and this time it's caused a collision with his teammate, which is the big sort of number one no-no in Formula 1. The first rule is you do not take out your teammate. So this, of course, has put both of the Red Bulls out. The second time in 4 races that neither Red Bull has scored any points. And it's embarrassing and frustrating for a team that could be, and perhaps will be, towards the end of the season, fighting quite hard for wins. there is some serious pace there. The engine lets them down, but the car itself is good. There will be tracks and venues which will suit the Red Bull quite nicely. And in the shape of both Ricciardo and Verstappen, they've got two very punchy, aggressive drivers. Ricciardo in particular might be wondering if this incident will make him think harder about where he goes next season. There is, after all, the possibility of seats at both Mercedes and Ferrari, as discussed in a previous video. And depending on what the long-term fallout from this is, depending on how his relationship with Verstappen goes from this point forward, as well as the overall sort of dynamic within the team, this might accelerate his plans to move on, which is of course dependent upon what other teams decide to do as well. But via Ricciardo, depending on how conversations go with him, the team and Verstappen, I'd be wondering where the team's focus is. And I'd be wondering, where do I want to be? Do I want to be in what might end up being a bit like Team Verstappen? Or do I want to go somewhere where I might feel I have a more realistic shot at winning things? So, the long-term consequences from this incident, who knows? In the short term, the stewards decided both drivers were at fault to a certain degree, and the team themselves have made both drivers apologise to the team for costing points here today. They'll be furious. Christian Horner himself, as one of the TV guys was trying to talk to him, was cut a very angry figure as he marched off to the offices to have words with the drivers. And everyone at the team will be massively disappointed with what's happened, as they should be. And they won't be the only ones in the sort of fallout from Baku who will be disappointed. The safety car brought quite a few cars into the pits. It brought Bottas into the pits for ultra soft tyres. It also brought Vettel and Hamilton into the pits for ultra soft tyres. At this point, Kimi Raikkonen, who had actually recovered really, really well, also put on ultra soft tyres. And you're in this situation where suddenly everyone, apart from I think Sergio Perez and the other Force India, was on ultra soft tyres. There was a prolonged safety car spell because Romain Grosjean crashed under the safety car, which is always rather embarrassing. And initially, Grosjean, for some bizarre reason, blamed the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson for causing the crash, even though Ericsson wasn't actually anywhere near him. Now, maybe Grosjean thought he got bumped, maybe he was embarrassed, but in an age where there were TV cameras everywhere, you can't really claim to have been hit when you haven't. That just looks rather silly. So I think Grosjean, upon reflection, will probably be thinking, no, I simply made a mistake. That prolonged the safety car spell even more, and it wasn't until only 2 or 3 laps to go, I think, when the safety car finally pulled in and we actually were able to go racing again. Almost immediately, Vettel's tried to regain the lead from Bottas. He has overcooked things into turn 1. He's flat spotted his front left tyre, ran wide, and that's not only allowed Bottas to stay in the lead, but it's allowed Lewis Hamilton to get by him into second place, and it's allowed Kimi Raikkonen to get by his teammate as well. And with a knackered front left tyre, that all wound up being a sitting duck for the Force India of Sergio Perez. So at that point, Vettel found himself down in 5th, but 5th would actually become 4th because as they run around onto the start-finish line again, Bottas ran over a bit of debris that the stewards had missed from earlier incidents, and he suffered a puncture, which ruined his race, which was an absolute massive shame, really, because Bottas, if Vettel wasn't going to be the winner, somewhat unluckily actually in the case of Vettel, then Bottas would have been a good winner himself. He drove a very composed race, looked very assured, and he had the pace ahead of Hamilton to win the race. And then, because of the marshals, the stewards failing to pick up upon something they should have, he's got a puncture and his race has been ruined. And although he was classified as a finisher, he ended up being classified a lap down, effectively last from the remaining cars on the grid. And Hamilton took the win. Hamilton took an unlikely win, a win that he was the first to more or less admit he didn't really deserve. He actually said it himself. He had an untidy race, an untidy weekend. He wasn't happy with his performance. Naturally, of course, any driver would take a win in the circumstances, and that win actually puts Hamilton into the championship lead, which is quite remarkable when you consider that he's had a rather poor start to the season by his standards. Australia notwithstanding, where he looked set to win before a team error. At the previous couple of races, he'd been well off the pace, and he looked off the pace somewhat in Baku as well. Vettel should really have had a win here, as he really should have had a win perhaps last time out in China as well, but through a few strategic errors as well. So from Vettel's point of view, he finds himself 4 points behind in the championship, but he'll feel very much that he should be somewhat sort of further ahead than he actually is. So he'll be hoping that when they go to Spain next time around that Ferrari can maintain their momentum, because Ferrari is actually at the moment the fastest car on the grid. It's faster than the Mercedes, which is an unusual position for Mercedes to be in, but there's no denying it. The Mercedes car remains strong, there's no question of that, but Ferrari are faster. And there were signs that Red Bull, if they can avoid crashing into each other, could be in that mix as well. So there's some interesting dynamics this season. Lots to sort of think about for the lead teams, and lots to think about for the drivers as to where they go from here. Especially if you're Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull and you're sort of wondering what that dynamic is going to be in the team going forward, especially with the team pondering contracts and things like that. But overall, this was an amazing race. This was, well, as it was last year, there were some truly sort of chaotic moments brought around by cars struggling to get temperature into their tyres, struggling with crosswinds. There were some tight, narrow parts of this track. There are areas where you've got high speeds being carried into suddenly very slow corners, and there's just a lot going on here. There was a lot going on further down the field as well. There was a great performance from a few guys actually. There's a Sauber guy, Charles Leclerc, that was it. I forgot his name for a second there. Charles Leclerc in the Sauber, he picked up some brilliant points. You can say he got lucky a little bit with retirements, but you've got to be in a position to take advantage of those retirements when they happen, and he was. 6th place for Sauber, fantastic for him. Fernando Alonso recovered from his early damage and drove with a damaged car to finish 7th. Brendan Hartley picked up his first point of his Formula 1 career as well. And Lance Stroll picked up points for Williams as well. So some surprise performances. Sergio Perez took a podium, by the way, as well, in 3rd place at Force India. So some great results across the field for certain teams who would regard this race as being a success. Other teams will be viewing missed opportunities and mistakes from their drivers. It all adds up to what could be an interesting and fascinating Grand Prix next time around in Spain, and hopefully we'll get some more of the same in what's been so far a pretty absorbing start to the season.